It's How I Make Money with Andy Beadle.
You know, what I love about the ability to talk to people like you is to help folks understand from the outside, okay, there are a million ways to do real estate. There are a million ways to do collectibles. There's a million, you find your way. Here are the basic principles. As long as you follow these principles, you can put your spin on it. And explaining those principles is huge. And clearly you've got that shit on lock. So, thought that was awesome. So do us all a favor. Tell us a little bit about who you are, what you're into now. You don't have to mention the sports card flipping, but I do like it.
Sure.
And we'll start it off that way.
Right on. So Justin Colby, I've been flipping homes since 2007. I started off actually broke, busted, and disgusted. I was a mediocre at best realtor in 2005 and 6. And the reason why I say mediocre is I actually basically me and my buddy started a real estate brokerage, and we were selling his father's new home builds. And what that meant is essentially I was an order taker. And what that means is I essentially didn't develop any skill. I literally would get back in the boom. I would take 20 orders a day and be like, who's the highest? And this one's the winner. There was no skill developed, right? And so when things started to shift and people weren't buying new homes as quickly, and then all of a sudden I lost it all, right?
Yeah,
so I was spending, my lifestyle spend was keeping up with the income. And when that stops, you get in a tricky spot. Well, my tricky spot was I lost my home to foreclosure.
Whew.
The repo man literally took my car, which is a really funny story. And I walked away from $40,000 of credit card debt, and I was sleeping on my friend's couch. And at that point, in my opinion, I was an adult. I didn't want to run home to mom and dad. So I called a friend and I said, hey, do you mind if I crash for a bit? Simultaneously, I had a buddy he was working for KB Homes, the home developer.
Yeah.
He was in a tricky spot. He hasn't lost his job yet, but the economy was kind of pointing that way. So we decided together to jump into real estate investing. This is way before all the gurus and all the YouTube channels and all the podcasts. This is back in 2007.
Well, and the apocalypse is on the horizon, right? I mean,
that's right. That's right.
Wow. Yeah.
And so we didn't really know what we didn't know. We just started going. And I was cold calling realtors every day and setting up appointments and painting this picture like I was the biggest, baddest investor of all time. And I'd never even flipped a home before, right? But over 9 months, I got me my first deal, and the rest is history. It got me to my second deal almost immediately because momentum is a very real thing. Mm-hmm. The best time to get your second deal is right after your first deal.
Yep.
In sales, that's true regardless of the vertical. And then we invested. I borrowed $25,000 to invest in coaching because I genuinely believe in coaching. I've been an athlete my entire life. Every cellular component of my body believes you need to be around people who've done it before for you to reach those levels. So I invested in coaching, got what I needed from that, and then the rest is history, right? And in 2014, I started my podcast called The Science of Flipping, which is on iTunes. I'm doing daily podcasts at this moment.
Oh, wow. Cool.
And then the YouTube channel and my coaching platform and all that came out of my success in flipping homes.
Well, and this would be great, and I definitely want to circle back to what you're doing now and how people can kind of get in touch with you and work with you. But a couple of the things that you pointed out, you had this real moment of, oh, wow, here's what I don't know. And then you kind of dove in to figure it out. And I think a lot of long-term success and sustainable staying in business comes down to those kind of basic principles. And I meet a lot of people who are athletes, still are, and they take a lot of that stuff to their business game. Like, talk a little bit about what it was like to kind of get knocked back so hard, start up in an area you thought you knew something about, but it turned out you really didn't, and then seek out mentors and coaching. I mean, that's a hugely formative thing to do early on in the game.
Absolutely, and this as much as anyone else, right? Like, when you lost it all, you kind of go into the mentality of like, well, when you're at the bottom, you really can't go lower, right? Like. Walked away from credit card debt, home to foreclosure, repo man took my car. Like, there's literally nothing else to lose. I was single, right? I didn't have a family. I'm like, well, I like this couch, right? So the mentality changes a little bit when you're quite literally at the lowest point you could possibly be in terms of income and revenue, things of that nature, right? So I had nothing else to risk. It was all on my shoulders. So I had that mentality of I'm going to win and it's all on me to do so. And that's very hard to teach. I inherently got that somewhere.
Right.
Probably from my childhood. As most people, kind of have a tougher childhood. And so I had to kind of figure it out on my own. And I'm so blessed to have that experience, right? Because I blessed my parents for maybe being a little difficult, because it gave me this opportunity to figure things out on my own. So the key though was I knew brute force could get me somewhere, but with no strategy, systems, or processes behind brute force, I knew there was never really some leveling up that I wanted to do. And, I've done over 1,600 flips now in my career. And could I have done that without coaching? No, is the answer.
Right.
Because I didn't have anything behind the brute force. There was no tactic. There was no strategy. There was no blueprint. Like I mentioned, I reference being an athlete and having coaching. Like, even if I had the blueprint, but I didn't have a coach to show me how to throw the football and where the release point of the ball needs to come out and all those other things that a coach will show you, I can throw a football, but then I'm going to throw my shoulder out because I'm just going to throw it hard. I don't have technique or strategy behind it, even though I've been given the blueprint. And I firmly have always believed that. And so when it came to the point of we got our first couple deals done and we made like a whopping $14,000 total, by the way. And that was split between two of us, and I had no money. And anyways, you get my point. I'm still living.
You can buy a nice couch for $7,000 though. You can buy a really nice couch for $7,000.
Unbelievable. My sleeping bag game on the couch got leveled up for sure. So it was a belief system. I genuinely believe this as entrepreneurs. You have to believe it before you see it. And I think that's really tough for people to do because their own insecurities. They've never, between, no one giving them the confidence to really go out there and achieve what they really want to do. This is why so many entrepreneurs fail. This is why there's so few really successful entrepreneurs. And that's why they get highlighted a lot of times.
Right.
That came within, and I knew if I could get some coaching and put some processes behind my determination, my fortitude, my unshakable belief system, I was going to win. And I think that's where people need coaches as much as giving them the blueprint. They need them for that confidence, right? And to be held accountable and to, this is what you have to do. Don't overthink it. Just go do it. And if you do it, you will start to achieve, and that builds confidence. Well, I hope I answered your question.
Absolutely. 100%. But those kinds of things are important. And I think another aspect of the story you just told that maybe isn't obvious and is worth pointing out, like, you get a real big dose of humility when you're sleeping on your friend's couch. Totally. Like, that's the moment where you go, oh, wow, everything I thought I knew about the world, maybe I don't. And I think that is a make or break moment for a lot of people. And that comes in a lot of different areas. Like, I've known people who've gone into business, they've started business, they get a couple of years in, they have a couple of good months, then they decide how the world works and how things ought to be. And there's nothing like getting kicked in the teeth to learn, the world doesn't care what you think it ought to be like. And to go from that into what you said, which is, I knew brute force would get me somewhere. I knew I could begin to develop technique, but I needed to go find a mentor, a coach, somebody who knew the path. I think that's hugely valuable. How did you go find that person? I mean, there's a lot of coaching out there. How did you make that decision early on about who to work with?
Classic internet marketing, right? So this is the phase 2008, then it would be now, was kind of the start of internet marketing to my understanding of it, right?
Right.
And so this is right about where people started doing social media starting to come up. So you would see every so often a video and I'd watch it. And so I caught someone's video. It drove me again to some sort of landing page. That landing page drove me to like some sales webinar.
Right,
again, I'm completely naive to all this, beyond naive, right? So I'm like, this is cool. Yeah. And I have no idea the webinar is basically going to sell me something at the end. I think I'm literally prepared, like full blown class, notepads, the
You're
whole
like
thing.
writing it all down. Yeah, I hear you. Yeah.
Oh yeah. And at the end, they sell like a CRM system, right?
Okay.
Customer relationship manager system for real estate investors. I'm like, I got to have that. I call my grandfather. I don't have $1,000. It was $1,000. I'm on a couch. I have no money. Grandpa, can I borrow $1,000? Sure. Buy the CRM system. The CRM system gives me 2 tickets to this live event. The live event turned out to be one of the largest real estate education spaces, fortune builders.
Okay.
And now I'm in a live event, hopped up on the ether. I'm obviously going to buy the coaching.
Right. There you go.
And so, called a friend. Hey, dude, I'm going to win. I'm going to win big, but I need to borrow some money.
Right.
And here we are today, 13 years later. And obviously worked out for my friend believing in me, and it's worked out for me.
And I think, and I guess 2 things I'd love to talk about. One, at the time you've got left, flipping, what is it? Like, because that's a whole mindset. That's a whole ability to find value, create these moments of arbitrage into a market. Your story of I would buy cards, open the foil, and lay them back down and make my money. We're gonna. I know this is not your gig, your main thing, but I'm gonna link to that episode of your YouTube channel as part of this because I love it. This kid sitting there like, give me my money, give me my money. I love that. And another thing too, you come from a hard place, you go through an amazingly hard time in real estate, and you're still here 12 years later. So at what point did you maybe not make the flip, but at what point did you get to this point in your business and your understanding of the mechanics of being successful that you turned around and started to mentor people, right? Where is that inflection point for you?
Yeah, great question. Ironically, the same mentor program that I paid for asked me to start mentoring based around my successes, right? They're like, hey, you could start to educate some of these people who are just coming in. So that started it. I said, absolutely. Like I referenced several times, I've always been an athlete. I've always loved coaching. I've really learned now in my later years, my superhuman power really is communication in loving to be able to help others. And so, but it's really baselined in communication, right? I'm just really, really, really good with people,
right?
In all different types of people, right? From the broke to the super wealthy, right? And you can throw me in any party, anywhere with any type of group. I'm going to navigate that and come out as a rock star, right? And so I said yes. That led me into kind of thinking, oh man, there's got to be, this is fun. I'm enjoying this. There's got to be another platform. Podcasts pop up. So I started my podcast in 2014. From there, people have just, that started my coaching, right? Which was, hey, what about this? And it's like, well, I can give you all my secrets or become a businessman and realize there's a lot of value in that, and I can start charging for that. And so over the years, there's been different iterations of that. But yeah, that's where it came from is my desire. Like right now I'm doing a podcast a day and a YouTube video a day, every day. Okay. It's because I have a lot to say and a lot of learning lessons, right? Sometimes you earn, sometimes you learn. And I want to help people avoid that because those learning lessons a lot of times are really painful, right? So
And as an athlete, you learn to go to school on other athletes, right? I mean, that's why you watch film, to know not to make that mistake, do that right. Well,
all those principles, they 100% align with what I'm saying is don't do the mistakes I made, right? Like I've done this a long time. So if you are either just getting into the industry or you think you want to go scale and go national and have this big operation, oh, well, let me tell you about when I had 28 employees and we were doing massive revenue numbers and my profit margin was in the single digits. How about that? Right? Because people think that's sexy, and that's not sexy. You want to grow your wallet. You don't want to grow your operation, right? That's the idea. Now, if you can grow your wallet because you grow your awesome. But I think people just have that backwards, and it's cooler to be on Instagram with 30 people in your office and show that off, but then you net out and you're making 4%.
Oh, it's not worth the hassle. And in most cases, you don't have a saleable business.
No, and wholesaling, and that's a totally different topic. I primarily wholesale. It's not really a sellable business anyways, truthfully. It's a transaction business, always will be. The thing about wholesaling specifically, for those that do follow me or are interested, wholesaling is, I call it like an ATM, right? That's a quick cash. Like I can go create and generate a ton of cash, right? And then you take that cash and put it into something like rental properties. That's sellable, right? Then you have a real business.
Absolutely. Let's talk about flipping as a science, the science of flipping. I mean, tell people, people talk about, oh, I'm going to flip this, flip that. I don't think people really understand the mechanics of learning to find an asset that is undervalued in a market and then bring its value up to market and to go through that, whether it's sports cards or a home or whatever. What's your approach? What do you think the basic principles of that really are?
If you really keep it simple in the sense of like economic supply and demand, that will really help you understand the premise of flipping, right? So, for example, I'm going to use several scenarios. Like,
Sure.
I'm going to try to leave politics completely out of this, but our world is so broken as a moment in time as we are recording this training.
I will sign on for that. That's true. There you go. Yes.
Yeah. For so many reasons. But one thing that's happening to us, specifically in the real estate space of Phoenix, is because of all of this, there's a lot of people that are leaving what I call like the coastlines and coming inward in the United States, right? In Arizona being so close to California with great weather 75% of the year, terrible weather 25% of the year.
Right.
People are flying here, like literally my understanding, and again, I don't know how to 100% prove this, but north of 500 people a day are leaving California coming specifically to Arizona. And that doesn't account for the people going over to Texas and other states a day.
That's nuts.
So just the basic economics of supply and demand, you would probably have a safe bet flipping homes in Phoenix because people need a place to live. You'd also probably have a safe bet having rental properties. Now, there's other things that we could go on a deep dive with is price versus interest rates to have a rental, because the prices do not make sense for a good rental based around the rents. But now the rents are coming up because so many people are coming in.
Right.
So a lot of this is based around just the simplicity of economics. And I know it sounds simplistic, but it really is true, right? Simple supply and demand. Like I'm big into wholesaling, which may be a term your audience is familiar with or not. But I like it because there's very little to no risk at all.
Right.
I never buy the property. I don't have to rehab the property. There's no contractors involved. There's nothing. I just assign my contract over to another end user buyer, flipper, buy and hold buyer, etc.
Right.
And so for me, little risk, low profit margins, but volume makes a lot more sense.
Well, and like you just said,
I love that model. Now I do flip. Go ahead.
I was going to say, as you just said, identifying this situation where I'm going to have an imbalance between supply and demand puts you in a real sweet spot to do the kind of volume you need to make the money you want, even at low margins, right?
That's right. That's right. And then when you do find a good little cherry, I call them, right? Like, so I'm flipping a nice little condo, low price point, worst case scenario, I keep it and put it in a portfolio if I really, really needed to.
Right.
But because there's no huge financial commitment, I could never really get hurt. So, but I will, 3x my return relative to wholesaling. So that makes sense to me. So instead of making 10 grand, I'm going to make 30, technically 35. I will take the time. Now, a couple factors. It takes more time. So the process is going to take me probably 90 days to make that 30 grand. So could I have done this 3 times in the next 90 days to equal that kind of income? Things like that, obviously you got to encounter. But let's bring this over to kind of what you found that I'm getting really into again, which is the sporting cards. The economics and everything about this is the same, right? Meaning, so it's football season. So there's a high demand for football cards, especially with such good rookies that are playing in the league right now. So I'm more apt to buy basketball cards, but because of the demand right now is a moment in time to buy football. Literally today, I'm going to go buy 4 more boxes of football cards because people are buying these things like hotcakes because it's in season, right? And players that you probably wouldn't think would have a lot of value, like an Aaron Rodgers, great quarterback, one of my favorites, etc. But he's been in the league for 12 years or whatever it is now.
Yeah.
Well, because they're going to probably make the playoffs and he's putting up season record highs, his card goes from a $5 card to a $25 card, which doesn't sound like a lot of money. But if you have 10 of those, right, and you essentially got them in packs, which is the wholesale model, right? Meaning I went big. I bought a whole box. So I get hundreds of cards in the box and I can sell these little cards and wait for the big payday, which would be my signed Hilaire card that I got in a box, which is the rookie running back out of Kansas City, who's like top-notch, top-tier running back all of a sudden as a rookie,
Right.
and that card is worth $500, and I have 20 Aaron Rodgers worth whatever I just said, $25.
Yeah.
Is wholesaling. It's fundamentally the same principles. I'm buying in bulk, selling on smaller margin, and then I get the big cherries, the ones I would rehab and flip,
Right.
and I sell those for the bigger margin.
Yep. Well, and you're doing a maxi min on velocity of your capital too, right? You've got
That's it.
Yeah, I'm going to buy a box of cards. This is a highly efficient use of my time and my money, and I'm going to get the cherry. Ditto with houses. I'm going to buy 10. I'm going to keep one, and I think that's something that people, especially when they go into business, and we work with clients all the time. We're a marketing firm. And we'll have startup clients, and you ask what seems like the most obvious questions. How do you plan to make money? And then you got to say, how do I make money in ways that are adjacent to that and that are still very efficient, right? So it's if I'm gonna go buy, who's the guy? Is it Frank Kinney? Who's the guy who does the multi-million-dollar homes? He's a big real estate internet guy.
Oh yeah, Frank Kinney.
Is it Frank Kinney?
Yeah, Frank.
I thought it was Kenny.
Anyways, I know who you're talking about.
Yeah, so this guy, but you look at his model and you go, okay, well, that's his game. He's not going to make adjacent and efficient money flipping houses, right? Because he's going to do something else in that luxury market. I don't know, tiny homes on a Rolls Royce or something.
Spec homes all the way.
Exactly. So I think one of the things that, at least what I hope listeners take away from this is when you're looking at the idea of flipping, efficient use of your capital and your time is the name of the game. The raw profit margin is not as important as how quickly I can turn it over.
That's right.
And then you kind of look
That's the wholesaling model and the velocity of money. You said it exactly right. Money loves speed.
Right. Yeah.
And how quickly you can move it. People wait for the big payday. I get it. And I've done that. And anytime I've gotten out of my core principles or my core competency, I get hurt financially. Right. Like if I go for the big payday and go try to buy this refractor LeBron that blah, 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 and I'm hoping he makes the playoffs and then goes to a championship and then he breaks his leg the same season, I'm going to lose money on that card.
Right.
Same thing with rehab. Now, Frank, great analogy. He goes spec home all the way. He has huge onions, right? Like,
oh yeah,
this guy, I mean, what he does is
and
incredible.
They're crazy houses,
I admire him.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah.
And I've spent a good amount of personal time with him. He's incredible. But I would choose the low risk, high volume speed play over hit. And I do choose it. I mean, that's what I do.
Right.
Because if that one occasion occurs, he does one every 2 or 3 years, most, right? Because that's how big his projects are. He's got to get the city to approve it, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera.
Right.
Like, sure, he might walk away with $2 or $3 million or $4 million, but he did one. So I like the higher volume, lower profit margin, sustainable, consistent model, and money loves speed. So just like wholesaling, I'll go get a deal. I go spend my money in marketing. I look at my ROI. I'm trying to 3x my investment.
Mm-hmm.
So if I spend $1,000 in marketing, I want to make $3,000 on my wholesale deal, and I'll say that's a win. Same thing with cards. I look at my money. If I can buy a box, pull out the cards, and I can 3x my money, that's a win. Now, if I can obviously do more, I would love to. That's where the big cherry on top, like the big signed autograph player card.
Right.
That's the rehab condo I'm doing. Those are the cherries on top. That's where your margins go from a business model that gives you a 3x return to a business model that might give you a 6x return. The principles are the same. Mm-hmm. That's why I love, now part of it is the kid in me. So the happiness factor really is really high with the sports cards and that stuff. And so you can't put a massive value on that, or you have to because how happy, but the strategies, the systems, the principles is the best way to say it.
Right.
They're identical.
Well, and I think having watched a bunch of your YouTube stuff, one of the things I really loved about what ties all that stuff together is it's very clear you enjoy what you do. Yeah. You dig this, you love this, and the same guy who's on a platform talking about, I know you think he ran a marketing masterclass or something last week with a colleague of yours.
Yep.
That same guy is the same kid who was standing in a store selling baseball cards back to the owner just going, who is this kid, And so I think, that's exciting. And another, you mentioned this early on when we started taping today. I think a lot of the business world, you see these people who are, they own these big companies. They're splashy. They've done great stuff. Don't get me wrong. I mean, we all want to, have dinner with Jesse Itzler and Sarah Blakely, right? And so you look at them, but they're not the folks who generally are your friends. They're not the businesses that you know and run well. When we sat down to do this, I just started writing down names of everybody I knew personally who ran a business that had been successful for more than 10 years. And that's a milestone. It's a long list. And those stories of what I would call everyday people who have, learned a lesson or two, found their rhythm, and have then built what I would call more than a successful business, a successful lifestyle out of it. Like, those are great stories and things that people need to hear. And you talk about this in some of your YouTube videos too, that you really have made some conscious decisions about the type of work you want to do versus the lifestyle you want to have and kind of how you want to feel about that work. And I'd love to hear a little bit more about that if you've got the time.
Yeah. So, it's funny, you go through these seasons in life, right? And so for the better part of the last decade, I was the single, fun, make a lot of money season. And it was a lot of fun. And so make a lot of money, spend a lot of money. That was kind of the way that goes.
Yeah, I know how that goes. Yeah.
But I didn't have, again, kind of whether right or wrong, like I wasn't married, no kids. It was up to me to take high risk investments. I mean, I did a lot of different investing in high risk stuff. Some of this is actually paying off now. Put a lot of money in crypto, like all that kind of stuff.
Right. Yeah, I saw that.
And I still invest in cryptocurrency, by the way. But, I was really going for it.
Right.
The point being is I'm now more in the season, newly married, kid on the way.
Oh,
now
congratulations.
I'm changing the frame.
That's great. Nice.
Thank you very much. Yeah. I'm changing the frame of how I look at business, right? So now it's about creating a lot of consistency and building the wealth side of things. Because like I mentioned, wholesaling, even flipping, you can look at as an ATM. It can create you cash and big amounts of cash relatively quick. Well, what you do with the cash really is important, right? Because as myself have done over the last decade or so, lived an incredible life, traveled, hung out with my friends and family a lot, right? But it didn't really get me to where ultimately I'm going to long-term want to go, which is going to be just, have enough wealth that I can make the choices I really, really want to make. Right.
Right. And build a legacy for your family. Right. I mean,
and build a legacy for my family. And so at this point, and interesting enough, the cards kind of play into that story, which is interesting enough. Right. But this is now the season where I'm reframing what I'm looking to achieve, and the different iterations in business. I think a lot of people get stuck into like, I have a good buddy, but he's run a pretty decent business. And I say decent, he does 7 figures, but it's that every year. There's never any, like, every year what you're getting with that business, which there's a lot of, that's really nice. There's no doubt. And part of that is his comfort level. Like, this is what I know. This is what I do. It's great. I net 800 grand a year. Awesome.
I mean, it's hard to spit in that. So,
it again?
I said it's hard to spit in that thing's eye. That's not bad, right? I mean,
but he's so talented.
Right.
Like, dude,
right.
You could definitely, if you put a little bit more elbow grease in and systemize a little bit more and want it. I mean, but it's also up to your desire. Right. You have to be very conscious of what you really want, right? Because, a lot of people say, follow your passion. Well, when you get punched in the face and get knocked down to the mat, your passion wanes. So I'm not a massive believer in your passion is going to get you by. I believe it's a great place to start. But when life daily, weekly, monthly, and yearly is going to punch you in the face and you have to keep getting up, your passion is some level going to wane, just like willpower.
Right.
You only have so much willpower and it breaks. So, you need to be pretty clear on what you really want. Like, my coaching is all around starting with the end in mind first. And it's because it's really true. And in business, like, what do you really want? Now, and if you know what you really want, you can start to back into how to achieve that. Now, the secret that I've found, at least for myself specifically, is that can change and have different iterations over time. That's why I talk about the seasons.
Yep.
What did I really want for the last decade? To make a boatload of money and to trick it off and be an idiot and have fun. Because in my philosophy, there's only a very small part of your entire life that you can do that.
Right.
Because then you do get married, you do have kids, you don't have the ability to be a 30-year-old going retarded. I don't know if that's politically correct, but like,
Understood.
I'm
Yeah.
spending
Right. Yeah.
thousands of dollars at the club
Right.
popping champagne bottles because it was cool and fun, and that's what I wanted to do. And how many years in your life do you get to go do that? A fraction of your entire life, percentage basis.
Right.
And I can tell you, being 39 years old, I've seen my fair share of people get divorced because they didn't get to do the selfish stuff first.
Right.
And then 15 years into a marriage, they say, oh, I want to go do my thing. I want to go do whatever I wanted to do before I got married. And I'm like,
Right.
doesn't seem like
It's a lot more expensive when you're 15 years in.
Amen. So there's just, and I'm kind of going on a little bit of a tangent personally because I don't believe there's a personal life and a work life. It is, as an entrepreneur, it's the same life.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's one life.
Absolutely. Yep.
And you run your business and you run your family, and there's no way not to keep it intermingled.
Mm-hmm.
And for those that firmly believe it is, I just don't fundamentally believe it. Right.
Yeah.
Now you get to shut it off and that kind of stuff, but kind of to digress. Sorry. I just don't believe, I believe there's different iterations, and you need to really want it. You need to know what you want to achieve, where you're trying to go. Because another thing that Tony Robbins brilliantly said, people overestimate what they can do in 1 year and underestimate what they can do in 10.
Right.
It is so true.
Absolutely.
So you need to know what you want. How bad do you want it? Do you believe it before you see it? And are you willing to put up with what it's going to take to get there and how long it might? And if you do that, you're going to win. But you're going to get punched in the face over and over and over and over again. And you need to get up off that mat over and over and over and over again. And again, that's why passion starts to wane. You need to really want it, want to know what to achieve, leave a legacy, as you just said. And if you want that, choose something you at least halfway enjoy. I love real estate. I'll never stop real estate ever. I don't care how old I am.
And
right?
people who love real estate are irrational about it. I mean, I love it. People just get so passionate about it in all of its different forms, and you're kind of like, yeah, I thought only people who are really into wine were like this, but it's awesome. It's great to see,
Well, there's different iterations. Wholesaling is great, and to some level, I might always do some style of wholesaling.
Right. Sure.
But it's fast paced, it's quick, velocity of money, speed of money, market, get the deal, contract the deal, sell it off. So it's very deal junkie, right? Mm-hmm. Like I'm a deal junkie, right? I'm a serial entrepreneur. I'm a deal junkie. The art of the deal, like how do we get it done, right? Love that stuff. But as things start to come down, there's different iterations to buying rental properties, to buying commercial properties, to syndicating a very large commercial property. Like, I'm a part owner in a fund, hard money lending fund, right? So there's just different iterations of being a part of the real estate space. But again, the principles of all that work to more of a passion project, which is the sports. And listen, I have these memorabilia behind me that are very, very valuable. Right. But the sports cards are a totally different thing. That's more like a passion project combined with a way to make quick cash.
Right.
And then where do I take that quick cash? How do I go reinvest that in something else, right? Whether it's cryptocurrency or it's a Tesla. I love Tesla. I firmly believe Tesla is going to go to the moon and back.
Right.
Figuratively and not figuratively, right? So that's my philosophy, man. Make a lot of money so you can invest it to build a legacy, build ultimate wealth, have a lot of fun in life. I think people don't have enough fun. I probably had too much. So I probably have to,
You can make up for it by having less fun, right? Is that how that goes? Well, and I think, excuse me, and I think as well, we started with this and coming back around where you're coaching people. I have met very few entrepreneurs who were not incredibly generous with their time and their knowledge with people who are serious. And it's super interesting. We know the coaching space pretty well. And I listen to people bitch about, $12.97 is not worth it for this course, or $3,000. And you kind of say, geez, if I could explain something to you that would help you make double what you made this year, if you would just do it, would you, what would you be willing to pay for that? And people don't really think about, I think, and maybe I don't know if it's, the prevalence of the ability to find stuff out easily on the web or what have you, but people are remarkably unwilling to pay for teaching. And a lot of the folks I know who do mentor other people and kind of set some kind of bar over that about maybe cash or time are really doing it to weed out the folks who aren't serious, because you don't want to spend your time coaching a player who doesn't really want to be on the team. Like I don't want to spend any time with you. I coached soccer for years, and the kids who are hungry to learn, you'll spend all of your time with them just to help them out, because it's just so gratifying. And as you talk about seasons, like you're obviously making that journey as well, where it's, I started, I was on the back foot, I applied all this, I learned this, now it's my time to turn around and help the next guy who's got shot out of a job and is sleeping on his friend's couch, and get him to where he needs to be. And I think that's really important, and that's also part of the journey and the walk for, I think, a lot of entrepreneurs. And I'm always shocked. And my wife, we go out to dinner, back when everybody was travel all the time. I'll meet somebody at a restaurant, somebody waiting tables, whatever. We'll get to talk. I'm like, here's my business card, call me. And my wife will stop them, and my wife will be like, look, nobody ever calls him. And so you think, and maybe it's just me, but that seems to be pretty common. So I think it's great to hear you focus on that. I know you're short on time. There are a couple of things I really want to get to before we leave. If you could have dinner with any living person, who would it be, and what would you have? Don't overthink it, but don't say anything that's going to get you in trouble with your wife.
Yeah, I mean, my first reaction is this gentleman right here, if you guys can't see.
Oh, yeah.
My first reaction is here. I'm just so enamored by him and what he's been able to build. And, me and my buddy were just having this discussion. What will last
for people
forever?
who can't see that easily, tell everybody who it is.
Yeah, it's Michael Jordan.
Yep.
So that was my first gut reaction, is to sit down with Michael Jordan. And the reason being is not just because I'm a huge fan of his, which I am, but if you really think about something that will last well beyond our lives, it's his emblem. The Michael Jordan Jumpman.
Right.
That one brand will probably last. I mean, I just don't know if it'll ever go away. And to understand where that comes from, like how much did he have behind that between him and Nike? How did they structure the deal? Like all the business stuff that, like, I want to talk basketball and I want to talk championships, but I'm also like, dude, you are probably one of the most successful business people ever.
Mm-hmm.
How did this all transpire? Who did you have in your corner? What are some things that you could teach me? Right. Between the two, he's like the one person, with that question. It's a great question.
Yeah.
That I would want. I would just be so enamored to be able to sit down with him.
And what would you eat? Steakhouse. All right.
Steakhouse. I love steakhouses.
Steakhouse with Michael Jordan. I love it.
That's it.
There you go.
And ironically, he had a steakhouse in Chicago. At least when I was a kid, I would go to Chicago every year in the summers.
Right.
He had a Michael Jordan steakhouse. I don't know if he still does or not, but
I never made it to that place. Crazy. And Michael Jordan is one of those people. I think it was it Guy Kawasaki at Apple, who would talk about working with Steve Jobs and say, a lot of people think Steve Jobs is an asshole. And, he can be hard on you. But whenever I walked in his office and he ripped me a new one, I decided that was a Guy Kawasaki problem and not a Steve Jobs problem. And, Michael Jordan is one of those controversial figures in a way. And yet, you watch that eulogy he gave for Kobe Bryant and, you realize the depth to this guy. And he is...
Yep.
He is a guy who exemplifies never be ashamed of who you are. He has worked to be where he is. He's worked to be who he is. And if you got a problem with that, that's a you problem, not a Michael Jordan problem.
100%.
And so I think that's a great choice. He is definitely one of those absolutely fascinating figures. And I know you're going to need to jump off quickly. What are you up to now? How can people get in touch with you and work with you if they want to learn more after the podcast?
Go to thescienceoflipping.com. I have a ton of free stuff out there, especially if you're just looking to get into real estate investing, a ton of free opportunities. So thescienceoflipping.com. Also, you can go to my YouTube channel, youtube.com/Justin Colby. And, social media is always a great place, right? The Justin Colby, both on Instagram and Facebook, the Justin Colby. But that's the best way to get a hold of me. I'm happy to help however I can. Especially those trying to start or even trying to grow and be more profitable. I find a huge passion in that because I think people don't do it the right way. And so happy to help.
I hear you.
Thanks for joining us. You can find contact information about our guest in the show notes for this episode. This has been the How I Make Money podcast by Brand Distillers. To learn more, visit branddistillers.com.